Hi there. Welcome to this screencast, which is instructions for outlining, which is the next step of your research paper. I'm going to go through four things with you: the instructions themselves, sort of the outline of what to remember. I'm going to show you the formatting sample that we've given you, as well as some instructions about okay, what content do I even put into these body paragraphs? And I'll finally wrap up by showing you the template in Schoology that you'll use where you'll submit and create your assignment. So for starters, please go in your packet over here to your instruction sheet. And we're just going to kind of work through this step by step to make sure everybody gets everything. The purpose of outlining in general and for us is to make sure we have a plan for writing our essay before we even start writing the actual paragraphs. There's two types of outlines: a topic outline, which is one you're probably familiar with. It's just like a couple of words in each line of the outline. And then there's a sentence outline. That's what we're doing in this assignment. Sentence outlines are really detailed. It's almost like writing your whole paper. This is why we're giving you a lot of time to work through this outline process, because we know that it's a big step. This is probably the biggest, hardest, most labor-intensive part of this project, because you're basically figuring out what you're going to say. Your outline requirements, first of all, it needs to be an MLA formatting. This is all sort of standard MLA formatting stuff. However, as usual, I'm giving you a template document to get you started. And if you use that, all of this stuff, the double space, the margins, the font, all of that is already set, good to go for you. All you have to do is fill in your heading and header. Outlines use Roman numerals, which you're probably already familiar with. So each Roman numeral on your outline is going to indicate a new paragraph. So your first paragraph, your intro, is going to be 1. Your second paragraph, which will be labeled number 2, that's actually your first body paragraph. Obviously, that'll be like somewhere down here on your outline. Your third paragraph, which you'll label number 3, is going to be your second body paragraph, and so on. However many paragraphs you've decided to have, most students for this paper end up with either 6 or 7 paragraphs, and that helps them to meet their 4 to 5 page length requirement. You already basically know what your paragraphs are because you've brainstormed your main points on your thesis and main point outline. So you're already good to go, even though we didn't label them with these Roman numerals on our first brainstorm. The other thing is, when you break down paragraphs, when you indent, you create separate levels of an outline. Okay, I'm going to break this. It follows a pattern. So your outermost level is Roman numeral. Your next level are capital letters. Your next level, if you go in that far, are lowercase Roman numerals. And then your final would be lowercase letters, but almost nobody breaks things down quite that far, because breaking things down becomes a different sort of issue. And that is something called the rule of pairs. Anytime you indent on an outline, you indent to indicate you're breaking this down into smaller subpoints. If you're saying, I'm going to break this down, you have to break it down into at least 2 items. So if you have an A, you have to have a B. If you have a 1, you have to have a 2. You can't say, oh, I've got this point and I want to break it down into subpoints, but I've only got 1 subpoint. If you've only got 1 subpoint, it's just this. So that is something that we definitely want to be careful of and looking for in the outlining process. Your thesis is going to be part of this. It might need to be revised if you've made any changes, but your thesis statement is going to be the last thing in your introductory paragraph. It's going to be a line in your outline, just like any other. Your outline is going to include your quotes. You want to make sure that your outline has the minimum number of quotes, which is 5, and the quotes that you include are going to have correct parenthetical citations attached to them. You have to quote at least 1 time from each of your sources on your works cited. That's how we get the minimum of 5. But in reality, each of your body paragraphs are probably going to include at least 1 quote from the novel and 1 quote from one of your secondary sources. So what that means is ultimately you're going to have probably more like 6 to 10 quotes in your paper. So you won't have to worry about hitting the minimum. The bigger problem is students allowing quotes to dominate their paper and not including anything but quotes. So the content becomes kind of a bigger issue. We don't want to just slap a whole bunch of quotes on there and say, okay, this is my paper. Because Your quotes do not make your paper. What you have to say about the text and about the quotes needs to be filled in at this point as well. Your content for this outline, your outline is going to be really specific. It's going to have a lot of detailed information, a lot of analysis. All of that is going to be in there. You want to make sure that your outline follows the main points that you included in your first draft of your thesis and main point outline. You're going to turn those phrases into topic sentences at this point. Don't spend a whole lot of time summarizing Their Eyes Were Watching God in the Crucible. Your reader of literary analysis, of anything you're writing literary analysis on, your reader knows this book or this play. So you don't have to spend time telling us that Janie got married 3 times or that Abigail and Proctor had an affair. None of that is necessary. You need to explain what the author is doing. We did give you a sample outline for formatting that we're going to look at here in a second, but do know that your outline is probably going to be longer than the sample that's included here. Now take a minute, we're going to switch docs, and we're going to come over here to your packet of supplementary materials, and this is what I call the formatting sample. We've given you this strictly as an example of what the outline should physically look like. The content of this outline is not good, all right? It was not written with the specifications of your paper in mind. It's just meant to give you an idea of what this should look like. So we see our MLA formatting. We see a quote here. And you at this point don't have to integrate the quotes. You can just label them like quote, whatever. But notice it has a parenthetical citation. We are going to ask you to highlight all of your quotes, so you can do that now. The other thing is you want to make sure if your quotes have any problems on your notes, you fix those before they end up in your outline. You don't want to lose points again for the same mistake that I've already told you to correct. Here's an example of breaking down a point into subpoints. That's what that would look like. And here we can see kind of, okay, so the body paragraph in this hypothetical paper that's not quite like yours. We have a little label here. And since I told you this is not a good example, what this should be is actually like a sentence, a topic sentence would go here. The way you see the content here is not what we're expecting out of you. We're expecting complete sentences. We've tried to keep this kind of short to keep it on only a few pages for you. So I repeat, do not use this as an example of good content for your outline, because if you do what this outline is doing content-wise, you're going to be in trouble. We're just showing it to you so you can kind of see what this would look like when it's all set out. Here's another thing. This is a bad example. In fact, we've said that in the outline. So my letter E says, explain how her hair shows the theme. All right. That's not what we want you to be doing. We want you to actually be doing that explaining. How does her hair fit the theme? That explanation should be in your outline. Your outline should not include just this little label. This outline is just for formatting purposes. All right. And it just continues on. You can look at it. This one is very light on the explanation. It's very quote heavy. But it at least kind of shows you what it would look like when it's done. Down here at the bottom, there's some reminders. These are basically the same as the instructions we talked about in the other packet. MLA formatting, rule of pairs, revised thesis statement, minimum number of quotes, many more specifics than this example does. And your outline will be longer than this sample. The sample's only 3 pages. Yours is going to be more like 4, 5, 6 pages. The final thing I want to show you is something that I designed a couple of years ago to help my students figure out what they have to talk about for this research paper. So students know that they have to write a body paragraph, but you're not necessarily experts at creating body paragraphs. So I have given you kind of a setup for what you need to talk about in each body paragraph. And there's separate ones, obviously, if you're doing Their Eyes Were Watching God versus if you're doing The Crucible. If you kind of follow along this, you're going to have the content that you need to do this. If you don't follow this, the risk you run is that your body paragraphs are not going to be analytical in nature. All of these things need to be addressed in each body paragraph in order to have a good analytical body paragraph. Keep in mind, if you're doing Their Eyes Were Watching God, this only goes for your analytical body paragraph, so this isn't going to fit for your paragraph that's on the beliefs of the Harlem Renaissance. That's going to be more informational. That one you can figure out on your own. But your body paragraph where you're talking about how she uses this literary element to do this, here's what you're going to do. You're going to, first of all, show her using this literary element, and you got to use a quote. Then you've got to explain, connect the literary element to the belief of the Harlem Renaissance. And here's some questions to help you move that along. If you're doing the Crucible, something very similar, except you guys have an extra step. You actually have to define the element of tragedy or drama first. Then you need to show him using it. You have to connect his usage of it to the definition of it, and then finally connect it to his social criticism. So this is a place where the body paragraphs diverge a little bit just by nature of the kind of thing you're talking about. The literary elements like characterization and setting are all really straightforward. The elements of tragedy and drama are often, it's more specialized information. You're going to probably potentially have quote from sources that do that. So please, in terms of content for your outline, this is the document that you should be looking at. I'm giving you some supports. I'm giving you some ideas and suggestions. If you use this, you'll be in good shape. If you ignore this, the content of your outline is probably going to be a disaster, and you're going to have to make a lot of changes before you go to the rough draft. Final thing I want to show you is over here on Schoology, and that is from your course page. If you find our assignment, which is over here on the sidebar under Outline, you're going to see, it'll be up here for you. It'll say My Document, and it says Outline Formatting Blank. When you open it up, this is what it's going to look like. Just like all of the other steps, you need to create your outline in this doc. It will enable me to see what you're doing. It will enable me to give you feedback, and it will all be right there to set that up. If you want to break any of these down into sub-levels, you can do that as you go. A lot of times people just leave this one level of their outline, and that's fine too. You can add extra body paragraphs if you need it. I've got 6 on here, but some of you may have your paper plan to be in more body paragraphs than that. So that's always something to consider too. Anything that's highlighted gets filled in with obviously your information, and once you do that, please remove the highlighting so that it looks like it's just your paper. If you have any questions, you can ask Mr. City, or you can always send me an email on Schoology, and I will answer it as quickly as I can. Otherwise, I will be back in school tomorrow, so you'll have class time on Thursday, Friday, and next Tuesday to be working on this in class. So I will be around plenty of time to make clarifications, to give you reminders, and to make sure everybody's on the right track and knows what they need to be doing for this. Thank you very much.